Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's President's Day, so the U.S. equity markets are closed. We've put together a few interviews from the past couple of weeks that we've done, including some from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Welcome back to Davos. Carlos Ghosn has led two automakers through the financial crisis and on to what he hopes is continued prosperity. The CEO of both Renault and Nissan joins us now here. Welcome to Arise. It's an honor to have you on, sir.
Thank you very much.
So let me start with some news. UK production numbers for cars at a 5-year high. Are you starting to see a turn in Europe to match what is happening in the United States?
I don't think, unfortunately, that the growth in Europe is going to match the one in the United States. I think we're going to see a slow recovery of the European market. We are already very happy to see that the decline of the last 5 years in Europe stopped. The numbers seems to be pointing towards a 1% growth for the first time in 5 years in the European market. I'm expecting the recovery to be slow and long. I don't think we're going to see anything like what happened in the United States.
And so that's going to continue to drag on auto sales, you think?
Yeah, but except that it's going to move up a little bit slowly. I don't think anybody has any expectation of a big boom.
This is your 12th year, I understand, at the World Economic Forum. There was an article in the Financial Times today that this forum no longer has revolutionary ideas. Now, a few years ago, you helped electrify Israel, for example. Do you think that this forum has been eclipsed by some newer conventions in the area of technology?
Well, I don't agree with the statement. I don't think that in the forum, usually you make decisions that are going to revolutionize anything. I think the forum is a place where you're going to mature the ideas that are going to lead to revolutions, because there are so many opportunities to meet with very exciting people, new leaders, new trends, getting to acknowledge some, new powers, economic powers, etc. So, and this is where everything is being cooked. Obviously, the revolution takes place after, but let's not underestimate the fact that this is a lab where there is a lot of exchange, a lot of meetings, a lot of good things happen after.
And so you've experienced cases where you've met here, talked to people, and then those ideas become actual items.
Exactly. That means electric cars is one of them.
Sure.
But we have a lot of meetings with tech company. We're now big on autonomous vehicles. I had the opportunity to meet with the Nigerian president. I know that Nigeria is going through a huge reshuffle to allow the car industry to boom in Nigeria. I mean, these are great opportunities that only Davos offer you in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I want to ask you about your conversation with the president from Nigeria. What do you hope to accomplish there? What is the market looking like in Nigeria and other emerging markets, which you have been a big proponent of?
Yeah, look, I think Nigeria has a huge potential as a car industry powerhouse, because I think the internal demand in Nigeria is big and will continue to be big, except that today it's being probably using more used cars than new cars. So the only way is to really develop an industry inside Nigeria, allowing to bring new cars at an affordable price. When you compare Nigeria, I compare Nigeria to my native country, Brazil. You have 170 million people in Nigeria. You have about 200 million people in Brazil. You're about the same size. It's about the same wealth. I look to the Brazilian market. It's more than 3.5 million cars, 90% of them assembled in Brazil. I look at the Nigerian markets. It's 52,000 cars, none of them practically assembled locally. So what I'm seeing in Nigeria is, I say, this is a country which should have millions of cars, not only sold in the country, but also built into the country.
I was going to ask you, are you going to plan to build cars?
We are. We are planning to build cars, and we are, trying to spend as much time as possible with the officials to give our ideas and maybe some competitors' ideas about what would be the best legislation to put in place in the country to help initiate these investments through new capacities, creating new jobs, and the virtuous circle of you build more cars, you sell these cars, you hire more people. It helps create a kind of middle class that in a certain way is going to be representing the main pillar of the development.
And that's certainly true in the United States. If you look at the early car sector at the turn of the century,
Exactly.
It built the middle class.
Exactly.
You mentioned,
but you're seeing it in Russia, you're seeing it in Brazil, you're seeing it in China, etc.
You mentioned electric cars. The EV car market in the United States has certainly struggled. Nissan has the Leaf, for example. Where do you see the opportunities for EV cars? And some people have said we should be focusing on natural gas cars instead.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can focus on natural gas or oil or oil only. You need also to focus on electric. I mean, electric cars and electrification of cars is going to be a big part of this industry for a lot of reasons. Not only you want to reduce your dependence on oil, but also because you have so much emission problems and CO2 problems in many countries in the world. So electric cars are going to be big. One of the reasons for which, for the moment, the sales of cars are slow, even though we hit 100,000 Leaf sold already, is the fact lack of infrastructure. That in people looking at electric car and say, where am I going to charge this car? So every time a city, a state, or a country has done a serious job into developing infrastructure, sales of car really took off.
Well, and also, they are a little bit more expensive, aren't they?
For the moment, but with the increase of volume, the cost is going down, and with the cost going down, price is going down. Electric cars are fundamentally easier to assemble. There are less parts, so fundamentally they should be cheaper than in a combustion engine car. The reason for which it's more expensive for the moment is because the scale is very different.
You have to sell more.
You know, that's it. You have 80 million combustion engine cars against a few tens of thousands of electric cars. So there is no match. But now with the increase of volume, costs are going to go down.
Finally, the future of Renault and Nissan. You basically have two jobs right now. What should be the future of the two companies in the partnership together?
Look, I think we're going to continue to work on this partnership. I think this is a work in process. It has been the case for the last 14 years, developing more synergies, developing more commonality, keeping the brands separate, and making sure that the cultures are going to continue to be distinct. We're not trying to do one company out of company as different as Renault and Nissan, or even Avtovaz in Russia. What we're trying is unite what can be united and keep the creativity and the identities different.
Arise News is a different kind of network. We are able to tell our own stories, and we're able to cover stories in a way that other media outlets don't do. We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. Arise News is a place where we can tell stories in an interesting, factual, inclusive way like no one else in the business can.
Well, with this weekend's announcement that college defensive end Mike Sam is gay, the NFL may get its first openly gay active player when he is expected to be drafted this year. Others have some questions about the timing of Sam's announcement and if he hurts his chances at an NFL career. Already, some analysts say his ranking for the draft has dropped. Here's a little of what Sam had to say this weekend.
Tell us.
Came to tell the world that I'm an openly proud gay man.
How does that feel to say those words to the world?
It's a load off my chest. I told my teammates this past August that I came out to my teammates, and they took it great. They rallied around me, they supported me, and I couldn't ask for better teammates.
Lamar Campbell played in the NFL for 5 years for the Detroit Lions and is now the NFL Players Association Director of Media Relations in Atlanta. Lamar, welcome back to Arise XChange.
Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
So let me ask you this. No one is really questioning someone's right to say what they want to say about their personal life at any specific time. But there are consequences, and do you think his decision to come out right now will have consequences for his upcoming draft?
I think so, but I think for the most part, this was the right time to do it for him, because one thing for sure is that the NFL is now put on notice. All the general managers, as well as the scouts as well, are put on notice. So now we can get this taken care of, and all they can do now is just focus on his skills as a football player, which is the most important thing coming up in the draft right now.
And for those who say it's a distraction, it wasn't a distraction for his college teammates, was it?
You know, I think if the NFL is going to move forward, and definitely congratulations for Michael Sam for having the courage. One thing scouts look at is leadership qualities and characteristics. Now, here's a guy who, of course, he built equity at the University of Missouri as a senior. But here's a program that actually kept it under wraps for an entire year and helped him produce to be an all-SEC Defensive Player of the Year. So his skills speak for himself. So when you move forward with that, I mean, I think you have to think about what he brings to the table, not only as a player, but as a man as well, regardless if he's gay or not.
Lamar, let me ask you, you said they kept it under wraps, but there was some word that there was pressure on him because the scouts were starting to ask questions. Do scouts actually ask that question, which would probably be on the wrong side of the law and certainly on the wrong side of the NFL's policy?
Right, of course, the NFL has an anti-bullying policy as well as an anti-policy towards asking those type of questions. But you have to understand that the NFL is a culture, the locker room is a culture, and
right.
I think this is probably the best thing for him. I think it was a perfect time for him before the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis, of course, where these questions and concerns are going to arise. And the most important thing is, can this guy produce for you on the field? And one thing that's going to be accepted in the locker room, and here's a guy that brings his lunch bucket to work every day, comes in and works hard every day, and shows that he's one of the guys, you're going to get that kind of acceptance. But one surefire way to get acceptance is to perform well on the field. You know, I can go back to Manti Te'o last year with his incident. Once he got into season and produced on the football field, you did not hear as much about Manti Te'o as well. And I think this will eventually pass over for him as well, too.
You know, what goes on in the locker room has certainly become an issue over the past year with the issue with Richie Incognito, who, by the way,
Yes.
congratulated Mike Sam today for coming out as
Yes.
well. So the locker room, there's a lot of focus on the locker room. So if you are a coach or a general manager and you take Sam into the organization, what, if anything, do you really have to do? I mean, is it possible that the best answer is just to put him there and let him play?
No, I mean, I actually don't agree with that. I think you have to have a plan in place. I mean, let's be honest, this is a monumental task, and I'll be honest as well. He's not the first gay player in the NFL, but he is the first openly gay player in the NFL. So you have to have a plan in place for that. You have to talk to your media director for that. You have to contact the NFL for help with that. Whether he's a first-round draft pick or a free agent draft pick, he's going to be the most sought-after media draw regardless who drafts him. So championships are built from the front office down, as well as situations like this are built from the front office down. So you're going to have a front office that understands this, a good relationship with a general manager as well, and definitely leaders in that locker room that will make sure that he's going to be taken care of, he's going to be accepted, and he's going to be treated like every other football player in that locker room.
You know, let me ask you, before this weekend, if you talked about Mike Sam, he was considered a star and that he would go rather high in the draft. And now some analysts come out and say, well, you know, he's been having some playing issues. He wasn't performing as well. It sounds like there might be a little bit of a wiggle room of an excuse they're giving the drafters out there.
You know, it may be some wiggle room, and you have to understand there's a lot of organizations here that have old ownership with old views. And that, I think, will play a part moving forward. But you look at, you know, his size, and some scouts have said he may fall because of his size. But you look at Robert Mathis, who Michael Sam is actually a half an inch taller, who led the Indianapolis Colts this year with 19.5 sacks. So I don't care if you're 6 foot or 6'5". If you're putting 19.5 sacks down on a football field, you will be accepted, and that's guaranteed.
And finally, do you think, because I saw this comment made, that a team with a seasoned head coach and a very confident quarterback is probably the best place for him?
I think the locker room, the leadership of the coach, I don't necessarily believe it's just the coach or just the quarterback itself. I think it has to come down from the ownership. Here's a guy that's going to have to be accepted from the top down. And if the ownership accepts him, the general manager accepts him, and this is now out on the table now. So now the NFL can brace themselves. Listen, guys, you're going to have a gay teammate. It's going to happen this year. This is a guy that's going to come in and he's going to contribute to your team. We have to make sure that we make the situation comfortable for him and accept him as a man, as a football player.
And once he starts making the big plays, the issue will probably go away.
Issue will go away 100%.
Lamar Campbell in Atlanta, thank you. Because we live in a global, interconnected world, business news no longer stops when the markets close on Wall Street. And what we've discovered over the past few years of the financial crisis is that events and news that happen even in the smallest countries impact the United States and the world at large. As we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs and companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use. As the Affordable Care Act rolls out, there remains questions about its costs and its implementation. Well, one man who is on the front lines is Bernard Tyson. He's the CEO of Kaiser Permanente, and he joins us right now here on Arise XChange. Thank you for spending some time with us this evening. Let's talk a little bit about the rollout of the Affordable Care Act. What is the latest news on how you think it's going?
Well, it's getting better. I mean, it was a rough start in the beginning, mainly through the federal exchange. But there are many state exchanges, while problems, probably not at the same level. A great example of that is in California. We worked in a partnership with the state, covered California, and actually the rollout, even with its challenges, has been nothing like what we've seen in the beginning at the federal level.
I've seen some comments that healthcare companies are possibly going to be cutting jobs over the increased costs of healthcare.
Well, a lot is going on in healthcare. I would not draw a straight line that that's the only reason. I think that the hospitals and the healthcare industry is really thinking through how to be more efficient and effective. I don't think if we're going to be successful, I don't think the strategy is simply to cut jobs. We got to care for millions more now, and we got to care for them in the right way. But no question, we have to work to get unnecessary costs out the system.
Yeah, and you've been talking here at the forum about the high cost of healthcare and that workers cannot absorb those increased costs.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the real wage increases of workers in the United States over the last 15 years or so, it has not been increasing.
Certainly not in the pace of healthcare costs.
Exactly right, and certainly not in the pace of healthcare costs. So it is not a long-term solution to simply pass the cost on, the added costs. So I think the challenge is really to the industry and to us, the country, to say we got to figure out how to retool this system so it is more cost-effective while also improving quality.
So how do you do that? Was the Affordable Care Act, is it starting to manage the costs of the healthcare?
Well, it's too early. I mean, we are, 23, 24 days into it, so it clearly is too early. But if you stop and think about it, over time, when you are now giving millions more access to what I call the front door of the healthcare system as opposed to the back door. So instead of someone waiting until they got so sick that they go into the emergency department and something might cost $5,000 to do, they have access to the front door of the healthcare system where maybe a $100 visit may in fact take care of the issue to prevent it from becoming a serious illness on the back end.
And one sector that we see growing really is the healthcare sector, in part because of the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, and the Affordable Care Act, the new technology that allows us to be more effective in providing care, there are a lot of factors that has required more people, in particular areas, to in fact bring the different expertise into the healthcare industry.
Mr. Tyson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you are watching Arise Exchange.
Arise News is a different kind of network. We are able to tell our own stories, and we're able to cover stories in a way that other media outlets don't do. We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. Arise News is a place where we can tell stories in an interesting, factual, inclusive way like no one else in the business can.
You're going to love this. 3D printing is shaping up to have one of the decade's biggest technological impacts. Worldwide sales of products and services are poised to reach $3.7 billion by next year. The three-dimensional printing technology that is supposed to revolutionize manufacturing and countless other industries is moving quickly and in many directions. Now, to explain this fascinating, relatively new technology is Bree Pettis, CEO of MakerBot, one of the market leaders in 3D printing. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be on the
Now,
show.
basically, we understand the technology is not necessarily new. It's been around a long time, but it's taking off now. Why so?
Well, when I got into it, I really wanted a 3D printer, but they were so expensive. They were really made for industry. So I made one, and when it worked, I made one so everyone could have one. And then now they're really affordable, and that's what's making it take off. It's kind of like back when computers were big mainframe machines, and then you could get something that you could put on your desktop. That's what we've done. We've made 3D printers that you can put on your desktop, you can have a MakerBot, and you can innovate.
Okay, for Neanderthals like myself, explain what 3D printing actually does. How does it work?
So it's kind of like 2D printing, except instead of a virtual 2D, a document on your screen and then printing out a physical 2D document, you take a 3D model that you can look at on your screen and then print out a 3D model physically. And these kind of things, it really unlocks your creativity, and in many ways, MakerBot is a manufacturing education in a box. So you get to learn how to make
Okay, now, of course, big companies use this, like the manufacturing parts for jet engines.
Yes.
We understand they're also using 3D printing technology for making like hip replacement, knee replacements, and also organ parts.
We've got a project that called RoboHand, which is a project to make prosthetic hands for kids. And usually these things cost tens of thousands of dollars. When you have a MakerBot, it costs like $5 in material. So
really?
And kids grow out of these things like sneakers. So it's not a big deal. Okay, you broke it catching a touchdown, make another one.
Okay, you've got other props here. You've got,
Sure.
my wife would love the shoes, the stiletto. I mean,
Yeah,
so-
and these aren't comfortable, so they are real high-heeled shoes.
Really?
Yeah.
Who would put something like that on? I can see Mario Batali with, like, the clogs that he wears.
Yeah.
But this is actually something you can wear.
Yeah. And then this is
Unbelievable.
interesting. This is a little model of a chair, and this is made right here in New York. A woman, Casey Hallgren, is a set designer and makes sets for Broadways. And she starts her process off by making models. It used to be that she would make cardboard and glue and X-Acto knives, and now she just makes them. And on top of that, she's become an entrepreneur. Now she, besides making sets for Broadway, she has a whole business selling dollhouse furniture.
Unbelievable. And of course, for housing starts, for making homes and designing homes, you've got this model for us.
Architects see MakerBots and they just eat them up. And this allows them to really win. They get to make models for their clients faster, easier, more affordably. And it's really different looking at a model so you can see the floor plan.
Oh, absolutely.
And looking at it in 3 dimensionals rather than just in like a drafting.
I've got to talk about the old-fashioned assembly line where, you'd have workers, making parts for cars or assembling things here. How much time does this take away from making a particular part, say for a jet engine or a human part for a knee replacement, as opposed to the old-fashioned way?
So this is the next industrial revolution. The old-fashioned way was you had a design, it would take a month or so to send a design out and see if it's right. Now you can have it on your desk. You can try it out. You can iterate multiple times a day rather than multiple times a year. So the whole pace of innovation, as well as the accessibility, ordinary people are getting these and trying things out, and they're becoming entrepreneurs.
A 3D printer, how much does that cost now as opposed to, say, like 25 years ago?
Back in the day, even still, you can buy a 3D printer for millions of dollars. But our printers start at $1,375, $1,375, and go up to $6,500. So, yeah. Everybody should be jumping in and getting one.
Now, I would imagine, we had the Andrew Schmertz, our main host here, was at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. I understand you guys were there.
We made a huge splash at CES.
Well, I can imagine now, there are other people that do this kind of technology. I figure maybe a couple of years ago, you probably wouldn't see many of you guys there.
Yeah, we were the first and only 3D printer company at CES for years. And then now it's just taking off, and there's all of our competition shows up as well. But we've got something special. We have a small, medium, and large 3D printer. So we've got 3 options. And then we've got a whole ecosystem around it to make it easy for anybody to jump in and try it out.
I got to ask you a question. I mean, I've got to ask the business, the economics of this whole thing. There may be some people that might be concerned with a printer like this, with this technology, that it might take away jobs down the road. Talk to me about that.
It actually creates jobs because it activates people and it turns people from, whatever they're into, it accelerates what you do and empowers you to do more. And in many ways, it turns more people into creative designers, more people into engineers, allows accessibility for these things where usually you had to be a tycoon to be able to come up with a new product. Now you just need a dream and a MakerBot.
I got to tell you, what the mind can conceive, they say man can achieve. And in this situation here, we're seeing this technology do great things. The sky seems to be the limit here, Bree. I mean, what's next on the horizon for this type of technology?
If you can imagine it, you can make it now. It's never been a better time to have an idea and make it real. And I think what we're going to see is we're actually to the point now where everybody knows about 3D printing. This year is going to be the year where everybody's going to know someone who has a 3D printer. Wow. And so are you going to be the first to have a MakerBot on your block? Now's the time to go out and
Well, I don't know if I can afford one yet, Bree. But I mean, this seems like really interesting. I guess we have 30 seconds left. If you had something that you wanted to make out of 3D printing, your big dream, what would it be?
What I'm excited about is we create the 3D printers and we send them out. And whatever you're passionate about, I want you to apply 3D printing to that and win.
All right.
That's what I want.
My next billionaire friend.
All right. Good to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Good to be on the show.
Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. And if you come to Arise and you watch our broadcast, these are the things we're going to bring to you every day, 24 hours a day.
One of the great things about Arise Entertainment 360 is we have this Arise to Your Health segment, which really focuses on the holistic approach of being healthy. So we do everything from working out to juicing to getting in shape by doing fun exercises like bouncing on a trampoline or wearing these bouncy boots on our feet when we're jumping all over the set. We've done karate, we've danced the weight off, we've done just about everything. And of course, I love when we eat on set, but we do it in a very healthy and clean way.
Experts say more than 2 billion people around the world live without adequate electricity, and a vast percentage of those live in sub-Saharan Africa. One company based in New York is on a mission to change that with this. It's called Lucy, a solar rechargeable compact light, the brainchild of a startup called Empowered. And the company's CEO, Jacques-Philippe Pivoget.
Close enough.
Okay, thank you. And the company's CEO is here to talk to us about it. Jacques-Philippe, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
You talk about solar inequality here because we're going off to Davos next week where the economic inequality is going to be talked about. What do you mean by solar inequality?
So solar inequality, a term that we use often is energy poverty. So according to many sources, there are about 1.5 billion people globally who are literally living off the grid. And the ramifications are significant.
That's really striking.
Yes.
That's a significant portion of the world. And when they're living off the grid, you mean that they have virtually no access to energy and electricity?
That's right. They have no access to electricity. There's another 1.5 to 3 who are on the grid but can't afford it or still have intermittent access. So they have brownouts and blackouts.
You know, we've talked a lot about the infrastructure problem in Africa. And this is what goes to the heart of the infrastructure problem in that they do not have a functional grid.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's something that's going to take a long time to correct. If you think about it, we've had electricity in the United States for over 100 years now, and you still have about half the globe that doesn't have full electricity. So even with a lot of focus, so the UN now has a global energy for all type initiative, and a lot of people are working very hard on this, but it's still going to be at least 10, 15, 20, 25 years before everyone can have electricity.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about one of the solutions that your company has put together.
Sure. So our first product is very dear to our hearts, as you can imagine. Her name is Lucy. So when you see Lucy, you'll be like, what is that? Is it a CD? But no, this is a solar-powered lantern, compact design, lightweight. You see the PV cell. She charges in about 8 hours and provides 6 to 12 hours of light.
And they work off solar power?
Off solar.
And how much is this?
$14.95. In our first year, we've gone from 0 retailers to over 100 in the US. And internationally, we've distributed 200,000 units into more than 50 countries. So when you blow her up, you press a little button, voila, you have light. Okay. This is her sibling Aura.
Okay. So this is one tool, though, but tell me how this helps, because you're not connected to the grid. So basically, it's powering just light. It's providing light.
That's correct.
So who is this basically for? How does that work?
Absolutely. So if you think of someone, say, in Botswana, and they're off the grid, they're generally spending anywhere from 5 to 28 hours a month just on gas for their kerosene lamps. So if you think about someone who's making maybe $3 a day, spending 5 to 28 hours a month on gas with a kerosene lamp is a significant percentage of the money they make.
But they can they afford these, though?
Oh, yeah, they spend more than that already on gas for their kerosene lamps. So if they purchase this for, say, $14.95, after a month, 2 months, they're saving money, and this is going to last 2 to 3 years.
So tell me a little bit about how you get this into the hands of the right people.
Sure. So we have a bifurcated approach. Internationally, we have distributors. So places like Angola, Jamaica, Ghana, Nigeria, we have distributors, which are companies that already understand the markets. They have distribution, they're selling something, and they understand that their target demographic would benefit from Lucy on many levels. And so they buy wholesale from us and they resell. That's one way. The other way is we have a whole Give Lucy campaign.
Well, I was going to ask you if you have foundations that are trying to help support this product.
Absolutely. So it's bifurcated. So we have the Give Lucy campaign, whereby we have a number of what we call special project partners. So in Africa, we have a new course which works with women in sub-Saharan Africa, making sure that they're able to lift themselves up out of poverty. And the Lucy Lantern is part of that strategy. And I mentioned the economics, but there's also health benefits, education, environment, gender, safety. Over 1 million people a year die from kerosene lamps alone.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but I'd love to understand how you got into this. It's still a startup company, about 10 people in the firm.
Sure. So it's been 18 months since we started. My background is in investments, but I've also founded or co-founded a couple NGOs. And I love this concept. I love the space, because it allowed me to work on many things, on the 2 things that I'm passionate about under one roof, and we have an awesome team that works very hard that shares that sentiment.
Jacques-Philippe, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And that's our special Arise Exchange for this President's Day. We'll be back on Tuesday. I'm Andrew Schmartz.